Cancer sucks, and Deion Sanders has beaten it. Welcome in. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. We cover the Big 12, and we're glad that you're here joining us. Of course, I'm not in the studios. I'm vacationing this week, but we still are bringing you the up-to-date content in the Big 12. If you're a fan, please make sure you are subscribed right now to the channel as we continue to grow it, YouTube, podcast, and, of course, our radio affiliates as well. So Deion Sanders announcing in a press conference on Monday that he is officially cancer-free. He had bladder cancer this offseason. His bladder was removed, and now he is all set to move full steam ahead with the Colorado Buffaloes. There were a lot of weird rumors out there, as you may have noticed over the last couple of weeks. What's up with Deion? What health issues did he really have this offseason? Is he going to continue on as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes? There were rumors around that, and thankfully they were all wrong. So big prayers for Deion Sanders beating cancer, and hopefully if one person who watches this video, if one person who heard Deion's message says, I'm going to get checked, I'm going to make sure I get checked for fill-in-the-blank cancer. I'm going to go do a health screening that I haven't done in 5, 10, 15 years. That is a win for all of us. It's maybe corny to you. I don't care. It's a win to me. And I think it's a win to Coach Prime as well. Because had he had to step away for any serious length of time, that would have not just been a blow to Colorado for obvious reasons. That would have been a huge blow to the Big 12. Because Deion Sanders is the biggest star in the Big 12 conference right now, and he's arguably the biggest star in college football right now. And you've got him right here in the Big 12. A Big 12 that doesn't have the traditional blue blood brands needed someone like Deion Sanders. And they've got him, and they kind of lucked into him, and they had success last year. And now you're seeing, what does Coach Prime have lined up for an encore without Travis Hunter, without his son Shadur? And if we had lost that storyline, that would have been hugely detrimental to the entire Big 12 conference, not just to Colorado. So this was fantastic news on Monday. And I am so glad that this is what Deion decided to do. And you know what? Deion understands media. Deion could have put out a press release. I think most coaches would have put out a press release and been like, yeah, I beat bladder cancer. I'm cancer-free. I'm ready for the season. And I'm not knocking these coaches, but like Matt Campbell would have done that. Chris Kleiman would have done that. Willie Fritz would have done that. Brent Brennan would have done that. The vast majority of coaches in the Big 12 would have done that. Deion gets it. He set a press conference. He set the time. He had his physicians side by side, and he made it a moment. He made it a spectacle. There were rumors flying all over the place on Monday morning. What's going on with Deion? What does Deion Sanders have? What's he going to be beating? Is he going to be on the sidelines this fall? He built up to that press conference and that moment, and that was enormous for the Big 12 conference and a huge win for Colorado as well. He's playing the media game. Some of the best know exactly how to do that, and that includes now, as we expected, Deion Sanders. So fantastic news all over the place. I know many of you are commenting right now on YouTube and also on Facebook. Please do make sure you like the video if that's how you're watching us today. Same thing on the podcast. Drop that 5-star rating and review. And if you're on the radio show, well, you just search Heartland College Sports wherever you get your podcasts or your favorite YouTube shows, and you subscribe to us there in case you ever miss an episode. Now, the guy lost his bladder, so I'm not going to sit here and play doctor, but I've got to imagine that does create some setbacks as well. And there were enough setbacks on the field for Colorado this year. Now you're reliant on a head coach who just beat pretty serious cancer if he lost his bladder, and you're trying to figure out what that means for the season. Now, I'm not projecting Colorado to be a Big 12 contender this year. Then again, I didn't last year. And if you talk to some of the Colorado fans who are very active on our forums, which I would love to see you on at heartlandcollegesports.com, just click on that forums tab. We got a lot of great Big 12 conversations going on there. They're insistent that this team, while maybe not having the superstar power of the last couple of years, actually has the better depth, especially along the offensive and defensive lines, and has just as much skill position talent, even if their last names aren't Hunter or Sanders. So that sets up a whole new element to this as well that we've got to be covering as we look ahead to the 2025 season. But Colorado football in general is in a much better place today than we thought it might have been just a few days ago when the speculation was rampant as to what exactly was going on with Deion Sanders. So excellent news all around, and very happy for the Big 12 Conference and what's to come. And Brett Yormark has got to be breathing a big sigh of relief now that Coach Prime is back in the saddle, and there's going to be a lot more on his coaching staff here as well. And we're going to learn a lot more about the staff that he has there because these guys are going to be tasked with more. That's just the name of the game. It's going to have to be the name of the game. They're going to be tasked with more. And, if you're a Big 12 fan and you're saying to yourself, okay, what does this mean for my team? I'll just say this much about Colorado. I would much rather play Colorado on the front end of the schedule than the back end. So Houston, BYU, TCU, Iowa State. You guys are getting them in the first half of the season. The back half is where you get to Colorado playing Utah, Colorado playing Arizona. They get West Virginia, Arizona State, and Kansas State. They actually have a very tough schedule. But if you're Houston, if you're BYU, if you're TCU, if you're Iowa State, you get them the first half of the season, I think that's where you want them. Because then you've got Coach Prime trying to navigate this post-bladder surgery world. You've got a coaching staff trying to navigate potentially new responsibilities. You're working in a new quarterback as well. You're trying to get a feel for what this team is going to be. You will be much better off playing them the front half of the year than the back half of the year. That is indisputable. So that's where we're at right now with Deion Sanders and how things are shaking out with this conference going forward. So that's something that when you look at some of the elements of this, and this is something that we talked about the other day on the show, if he had not been there, if there were question marks around what exactly this was going to look like in 2025, 2026 and beyond, it would have created a whirlwind of speculation because there was no – that's the other problem that they've got right now with that brand at Colorado. There is no backup to Coach Prime. Everything is reliant on him and basically his brand and what he brings to the table. That's why when fans were speculating about whether or not he might leave, there were huge concerns over what the fallout would be because he really hasn't built an infrastructure beyond himself, which isn't totally his fault. It's a lot about just who he is and the persona that he brings to any program that he's a part of, but there's not a backup to him. It's not a traditional coaching model where it's like Matt Campbell, Chris Kleiman, these guys can hand the reins off to an up-and-comer and not really miss a beat. That doesn't exist with this guy in this model. So there's good to that, and there's not so good to that. And the not so good to that would have been had he gone away, had he been put in a position where he wasn't able to coach this year and beyond, then it would have been a complete circus. I think you would have seen guys hit the transfer portal pretty quickly if that happened the way that we thought it might happen before we got the news on Monday. So it's excellent news all around. He has beaten the bladder cancer, and now you sit there and you wonder, what does this mean for this season? And how's Colorado going to shape up in 2025? And, listen, I think they're a bowl team, but if they hit just right, with these two quarterbacks they've got battling it out right now in camp, we could all be surprised. Just look at last year. I mean, no one saw BYU, no one saw Colorado, and nobody saw Arizona State doing what they did. Those three teams that all finished tied atop the Big 12, no one projected to be there. They were all picked at the bottom half of the league. It was only Iowa State, who played for a Big 12 title, who was projected to be anywhere near the top of the conference, but they weren't picked to win it. You had Utah and you had Oklahoma State picked at the very top of the league. So, and we know how that went for those two teams. They went a combined 2 and 16. The teams that were picked to win the league ended up going 2-16 in conference play. That's how bad it was and unpredictable it was last year. I don't believe this year is going to look like that in the league. I think it'll be more predictable at the top with some combination of Texas Tech and Kansas State and throw in Iowa State and Arizona State. And, I think that TCU is going to sit there and say, don't forget about us. This team was playing for a national championship 3 years ago, and then they kind of fell off the map 2 years ago, but they bounced back last year. So you're going to have 8 teams that'll say, we're in a great position right now to potentially get ourselves into a championship game come December. I would not put Colorado in the conversation right now, but I understand if you're a fan, you're saying, hey, just wait and see what we've got, even though our superstars are no longer with the program. Now, speaking of that very issue, you look at where things are at right now when it comes to recruiting in this conference. The recruiting in this conference is not getting enough attention. And I want to make sure that you know about what's going on with this recruiting in this conference. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. So we wrote about this on the website. The Big 12 is doing a great job right now in recruiting across the league, especially in the state of Texas. So Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, and Houston are all doing a great job holding their own against Texas and Texas A&M in the recruiting scene for the class of 2026. So traditionally, over half of the top 10 prospects in Texas end up at either Texas or Texas A&M. But if you look at the 2026 cycle, only 2 of those 9 top prospects have signed with one of the Blue Bloods. That leads the rest heading to other in-state programs or going out of state entirely. And that is very unusual when you look at the best of the best in college football recruiting in the state of Texas. But look at what's going on. Texas Tech currently has 67% of its commits from Texas high schools. Nearly Baylor's entire class to this point has come from Texas, including multiple 4-star prospects. Houston's 2026 class includes 5 in-state commits, including their quarterback Henderson, who's a 5-star guy. So you've got all this momentum for these programs in the Big 12 conference, and they're doing it with in-state high school talent. That is why it is so important that the Big 12 not acquiesce to the SEC and the Big 10 on a model that guarantees the SEC and the Big 10 twice as many college football playoff teams. You can't have that. You can't allow that situation to transpire where the Big 12 conference ends up with half the amount of teams, especially if suddenly Baylor and TCU and Houston and Tech are not recruiting on the same level of Texas. That's not what I'm suggesting here. But they're recruiting closer to those 2 teams than they ever have. And somebody noted this on our forums, and I thought it was a great point. When you look back historically, the gap between Texas and Oklahoma and the rest of the Big 12 when it comes to recruiting shrank over the last 15 years before Texas and OU, of course, left for the SEC. Texas and OU would always recruit really well. And it didn't mean Texas would win games because they couldn't develop, right? They were so bad at developing talent. It was such a mess of a program. They always recruited well. They never really won, at least until their final year in the Big 12. OU recruited really well and obviously had a lot of success. That was not the case for Texas. But you'd see teams pop up once in a while in the Big 12, and they would give OU a run for their money. But they usually would come up short because there was still such a talent gap. That talent gap has shrunk when you look at some of the national recruiting rankings between where the Big 12 teams are and some of the top teams in all of college football, especially Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma has seen quite a recruiting drop-off by their standards, going from top 10, top 15 classes to top 20 or top 25 classes. Because Texas kids oftentimes went to Oklahoma, and that goes back 50 years. So you're seeing these changes happening in real time. And the national college football media doesn't want to talk about this. And the reason the national college football media doesn't want to talk about this is because it would be bad for their narrative. And their narrative is that the Big 12 Conference and the ACC, to a lesser extent, can't possibly recruit at the same level as the SEC and the Big 10. So they're not going to say, wait, hold on, you're telling me some of the top players in Texas are now looking at TCU and Baylor and Houston? Houston was playing in Conference USA last some of these guys checked. No, they're in the Big 12 now. And yeah, they had a bad first year under Willie Fritz, but they've got NIL money. And we see that with basketball. And I genuinely think that once Willie Fritz, and he is doing it right now, continues to prove himself, you're going to be in a great spot where suddenly they're going to find themselves pumping in some high quality talent because they already have a massive geographical advantage being in one of the hottest recruiting footprints in the entire country there in Houston. That is just tremendous when you think about it. So that's one of those deals right there that you see Houston and you potentially have a sleeping giant on your hands there. Baylor's always had money to spend. Dave Aranda's now spending it. He was late to the game, kind of like Mike Gundy, not that late, but almost as late as Mike Gundy. He realizes he's got to play the game. I think Sonny Dykes is learning that as well. But Sonny Dykes and TCU, they brought in really good talent between high school and the portal. They've just had some major swings and misses, and that's what's hurt them. And we know what Texas Tech is doing. They're spending, according to reports, $30-40 million in a roster, and they had an all-time portal class. Now, can Joey McGuire make it all work? That remains to be seen, but it is one of those things that you look at, and you've got to be optimistic about if you're a fan of any of these programs. And if you're Brett Yormark, this is just further reason why you can't for a second consider the possibility of giving the SEC and the Big Ten 2 times as many wins, or 2 times as many or twice as many teams in the college football playoff. You just can't do it. You can't guarantee that. Not when you can't predict where the sport's going to be in 5 years. And the SEC, as good as it is at the very top, does not have the depth that it thinks it has, or that it has sold the national college football media on it having for the better part of 1 to 2 decades. Is Alabama great? Is Georgia great? Yes, they're great. After that, is Texas great? Yeah, I'll put them in that top tier too. But after that, there are plenty of teams with capabilities of having great years. Tennessee and Florida and some others. But is there a lot of mediocrity? A lot of teams that wouldn't win the Big 12 in the SEC? There's no doubt in my mind that that's the case. That there are plenty of SEC teams that would not have a chance or would not come close to playing for a Big 12 championship, despite what the SEC fanboys will try to convince you of otherwise. So that's what's got to be part of the conversation here as we move forward. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports as we continue to bring you the breaking news around the conference here. We've got a lot of things happening. I am on vacation. In case you're watching on YouTube versus listening on the podcast, you may notice a different setting, a different backdrop. But you know what? That's part of what we do. And I'm really on vacation, I guess you'd say, but I'm never really on vacation because especially with college football coming in less than a month now, I want to make sure that you're here and we're bringing you all the information that we possibly can. I will leave you with this. Rankings in the Big 12 for coaches. This was something that was put together by CBS Sports. They ranked the Big 12 coaches. Now, I did this a couple of weeks ago here on the show. If you missed that, you can find the podcast. You can find the video. That's why you've got to be subscribed. Our lists were pretty similar. The top 5 versus the bottom 5 were very similar. My top 5 in order: Matt Campbell, Lance Leipold, Kyle Whittingham, Mike Gundy, Chris Kleiman. Those were my top 5. The top 5 for CBS: Matt Campbell, Kyle Whittingham, Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, Kenny Dillingham. I had Kenny Dillingham at 10. They had him at 5. that was one big difference in our rankings. And a lot of that's because I get it. Kenny won the Big 12 last year, but I've got to see more than a coach who's only been a head coach for 2 years and, yes, shocked the world last year. But I guess I put more value on longevity. You can't tell me that Kenny Dillingham's a better coach than Mike Gundy. There's just no evidence of that. None whatsoever. Kenny Dillingham had a great year. He's not Mike Gundy, who's got 2 decades as a head coach at Oklahoma State, who's won, basically all 20 years outside of last year and turned Oklahoma State from an afterthought into a legitimate Big 12 contender on a fairly regular basis. You just can't put Dillingham above Mike Gundy. Can't do it. Our bottom 5s were pretty similar too. My bottom 5, 12 to 16, Sonny Dykes, Joey McGuire, Brent Brennan, Scott Frost, Scott Satterfield. The CBS bottom 5, Rich Rodriguez, Joey McGuire, Scott Satterfield, Scott Frost, Brent Brennan. So we had 4 of the 5 that were the same. And I know Tech fans are going to go nuts over Joey McGuire being that low, but you know what? While Joey McGuire can hang his hat on this, and that he's the first coach since Spike Dykes to have 3 straight winning seasons in Big 12 play. Mike Leach never did that. Spike Dykes was the last guy to have 3 straight winning seasons in conference play. We do have to take into account the way the league shifted over the last couple of years, scheduling-wise. Was not the true round robin of, the last 10 years or so, new teams in, OU and Texas out. I think if you're adding that nuance, listen, it's got to be there. And in the end, we're still waiting on some major wins and great seasons from Joey McGuire. And this might be the year. This might be it. Joey is still, I think, unproven. And the ceiling's very high, and I'm rooting for him. But I got a lot of flack from Tech fans putting him in my bottom 5, and I found it interesting that CBS had him in their bottom 5 as well. But we did differ on a couple of things. They had Gundy way lower than me. They had him at 8 behind Deion Sanders, which is nuts to put Mike Gundy behind Deion Sanders as a football coach. I'm sorry. That's just absurd. But we had a lot that we agree on. I had Willie Fritz much higher than they did. I had him at 6. They had him down at 11. That was another major differential. But to me, once again, Willie Fritz has won every single place he's been and won pretty big. That tells me you're a good football coach if you win at a bunch of different levels. So that's why I've got Willie Fritz where I got him, not just because of what he did or didn't do at Houston last year. But I wrote about this on the website as well at heartlandcollegesports.com. I'm Pete Mundo. So glad you guys are here. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast. And we are going to have a lot more content coming your way here on heartlandcollegesports.com. Make sure you check it out and go to our free forums as well. And if you're on the podcast, would you drop us that 5-star rating and review before you head out? Would so appreciate that. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Take care and go Big 12.